You present the gun, the dot's gone. So you fish up, down, left, right, until finally it shows up somewhere in the window. You've done this 100 times and probably told yourself it's just part of learning how to shoot a red dot. But by the end of this video, you will understand the two mechanical constants that determine exactly where your dot appears on every presentation. And I will give you a dry fire progression that you can run tonight. This will lock them both in, and you will never have to go fishing for the dot again. What's up, champions? I'm Chris with Make Ready, retired law enforcement instructor for Tactical Hive, the NRA, and the USCCA. If you've been struggling to find your dot on the presentation, chances are you've already thought one of these three things. Either you haven't found the right technique yet, or perhaps you figure more reps will eventually make it click, or you've started wondering if red dots are just not for you. I want to address all three of these. The technique exists, and I'm going to show it to you today, but more reps without fixing these two specific things in your mechanics won't make it click. It'll just make you faster becoming inconsistent. And red dots are absolutely for you. They're a game changer once your mechanics give the optic something consistent to follow. Because here's what's actually happening when you can't find your dot. Something in your draw stroke is changing every single rep. And until you lock down those two things, no amount of practice is going to solve it. But before I show you the fix, I need to show you why the way most people practice is actually making it harder to solve. Here's what I mean. When I first mounted an optic on one of my guns, I assumed it was going to be an upgrade. What actually happened, though, is I spent 2 weeks trying to present the pistol like I was trying to conduct an orchestra. One of the range staff finally asked me if I was trying to shoot the target or just give it directions. This was not a good look. And here's what actually is happening. When you can find your dot moves in two axes, either up and down, that's your y-axis, or left to right, that's your x-axis. If your dot is high or low on the presentation, that's a y-axis problem. And the cause is almost always wrist angle. Your wrist is a hinge between your forearm and the gun. If that hinge changes angle anywhere from the holster to full presentation, even a few degrees, the muzzle tilts. And when your muzzle tilts, the dot shifts vertically. If your dot is left to right, though, on presentation, that's an x-axis problem. And that cause is usually grip pressure. If the grip pressure is changed during the draw, the gun rotates or shifts slightly in your hand. Again, the dot shifts horizontally. Two axes and two causes. Here's where frustration and bad habits start. Most shooters respond to this problem by running more reps, more draws, more speed, more volume. This may feel productive at first, but if your wrist angle and your grip pressures are not consistent and they change from rep to rep, all those extra reps are doing is training your body to be inconsistent. You're not training yourself to find the dot, you're training slight variations in each draw, and not one single consistent draw process. A side problem that comes from this micro-steering of the dot is when you create all these slight variations in your wrist angle or grip pressures, this requires you to be more heavily dependent upon your vision. Because you're more heavily dependent upon your vision, by nature, your presentation will never truly become subconscious, which means it will always be slower and inconsistent. There's a more efficient and outcome-consistent way to approach this. And it's the opposite of how most people practice. So let me show you what this looks like. Let me clarify a few points first, and don't worry, this will make sense after I do it. But here's some basic logic. If nothing changes from the holster to full presentation, your dot is already on target when you arrive. You don't need to find it. You don't need to hunt for it. It's there because of the process. It's consistent and not random. There are two constants that have to stay locked in throughout the entire draw stroke, and we've hinted upon them. That's wrist angle and grip pressure. What you're building is called sights aligned by feel, or a kinesthetic way of creating a subconscious body mechanics. This gives you the ability to arrive at full presentation with your dot already on the target, and no aiming step is required. These two constants make that possible. So let me walk you through each one. Checkpoint 1, lock your wrists. This is your y-axis control. Your wrist angle has to stay locked at the same point in the draw process all the way to full presentation. This wrist angle doesn't change from the moment you establish your grip all the way. Your forearm and your gun need to stay in the same angular relationship to each other. This entire time, the gun is moving through space. The fix isn't grip strength, it's forearm engagement. You engage the forearm muscles to stiffen the joint, not squeeze. The analogy I use is like if you're trying to pour water from a pitcher. If your wrists are not locked, you will spill the water all over the place. Another way of looking at it is how the forearm muscles are engaged when you shake hands. The challenge is that most shooters don't even realize the wrists are changing in angle or grip pressures. It's a small deviation, sometimes just a few degrees, but this is enough to move your dot high or low and out of that window. You can see how these changes behind the scenes can cause frustration, doubt, and make you want to blame your dot. That was a struggle that I had until I was taught these principles by a grandmaster shooter. All right, that's your y-axis problem. Now let's talk about the x-axis problem. Checkpoint 2, lock in your grip pressures. This is your x-axis control. Your grip pressures are for your firing hand. This is determined right from the start of the draw. The moment your hand wraps around the gun in the holster, that pressure is locked in, and it stays locked, especially as the gun clears the holster and as your hands merge, and then all the way through to full presentation. Your grip pressures from your control hand comes into existence when your hands come together, ideally as close to your body as possible, without breaking your wrist angles. This control hand pressure stays consistent all the way to full presentation. The primary symptom of grip pressure changing is the horizontal dot shift left to right. You may also see some y-axis drift, but the lateral movement in this signature of changes is grip pressure. Most shooters don't even realize their grip pressures are changing. They think they're gripping the same way every time. The dot tells a different story though. Now here's a better way to train both these biomechanic concepts. And this is the part I told you most people have backwards. Instead of starting at the holster and working our way to full presentation and hoping everything comes together, we're going to reverse engineer it and start from full presentation and work our way back to the holster. By starting at the destination, you will learn what correct feels like first. Then you will build the kinesthetic pathway back to the holster that the checkpoint 3 is promised to deliver. And this is the drill I have promised to deliver, and so let's get started. So at this point, you understand the two constants. Wrist angle controls your y-axis, and grip pressures control your x-axis. But if both stay locked into full presentation, the dot will be there when you arrive. You won't need to chase it or micro-steer to find it. But understand these biomechanic concepts and being able to execute under any draw conditions are two different things. What I'm about to show you is the drill progression that closes this gap. A 4-stage sequence run in reverse order that teaches your body exactly what these two concepts feel like at every point along the pathway to full presentation. Now let's move to checkpoint 3. But before we get into it, we need to establish a solid foundation. I want to give you one drill that makes everything else land. We're going to run this first. The gun will stay in the holster the entire time. We're going to start from an indexing point on your body, like your wrist, your forearm, your hand resting near the holster, something like that. I like to fully relax my shoulders and then index the inside of my firing control side wrist to the base plate of my pistol. You can do whatever that you can find repeatable and natural. From this indexing point, we're going to establish your master grip. First, we're going to use the web of our hand. It's going to seat high in the beaver tail. Second, your index fingers are going to make contact just under the trigger guard. And third, the bottom 3 fingers will wrap around and grip the frame. Fourth, you'll establish your grip pressures with those bottom 3 fingers. Fifth, you're going to lock that wrist. And then 6, you're going to pause. You're going to note at this point what this feels like, what the pressures feel like, what the angle of your wrist is, the position of your hand. And that's 1 rep. Do 10 to 15 reps with deliberate pauses at the end of each. This will help you memorize what correct feels like, so your body can find it without you thinking about it. Once that feels automatic, let's move into the 4 stages of reverse engineering of this progression. Here's a critical rule before we start, and it applies to every single rep in this progression. If you make an error anywhere during the rep, stop. Don't finish it. Don't push through, because you're trying to build muscle memory. Stop, back up, and start over. Completing a bad rep doesn't build skill. It builds a bad habit with fake confidence attached to it. Every rep you finish wrong is acclimating your body to become inefficient. This is where maintaining training focus will help, because your brain will tell you, just finish it, you're almost there. But remember, your brain is also the system that tells you to hit the snooze button 6 times in the morning. It is not always working in your best interest. On this one, override it. In regard to speed, start at about 25% of your normal speed, be slow and deliberate, and then move to 50% only after about 10 clean reps. then 75%, and then eventually get to full speed. But don't rush this. The goal of each of these stages is the kinesthetic awareness, being able to know what your body is doing in space. Now we've established the foundation, let's build our consistent and efficient presentation. Stage 1, full presentation. We're going to start with the gun at full extension with the master grip in place. Both hands are on the gun, have proper grip pressures established, the wrists are locked, the dot's on the target, and we're at the final destination. This is what correct looks like and feels like. Before you do anything else, we're going to lock in that feeling in this position. We're going to pay attention to the pressures of your hands. We're going to pay attention to the angle of your wrists. This is the reference point your body is going to memorize. Now we're going to take that feeling and we're going to test it. Stage 2, compressed ready. From full presentation, we're going to retract the gun toward the center of our body and we're going to bring it near our solar plexus. The movement is entirely from the elbows. The arms will collapse towards the body and the wrists will stay locked. The grip pressures will stay consistent. Nothing changes except your elbows bend. Now we're going to press back out to full presentation and your dot should return exactly where it started. Same alignment, same sight picture, and if it doesn't, something changed. So we need to find it, fix it, and then run it again. We're going to run 20 to 25 reps at this stage. Your body is learning the pathway between compressed ready and full presentation. And this is what your body is trying to figure out. What it feels like to move the gun through space without breaking either your wrist angle or your grip pressures. Remember that orchestra comment that we talked about earlier? This is where that stops. Stage 3 is when our hands merge. So from compressed ready, we're going to continue retracting the gun towards our body and inline towards the holster until our hands begin to separate. Your fingers are still in contact and they're still forming a hinge, but you've lost your grip on your control side and only your firing hand side grip pressures are in play at this point. That firing hand wrist still stays locked and the grip pressures still stay consistent. Nothing changes on the firing control side. We're then going to press back out to full presentation, reestablishing our grip pressures, and we're going to check to see if our dot is still aligned. 10 to 15 reps here, we're going to focus on maintaining both constants with your firing hand, while the control hand transitions on and off. Don't move on until you get 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 consistency with the dot being where you started from. Now we're going to go all the way back to the holster. Stage 4, holster. From the hands where they merge, you're going to fully separate your hands and your gun arm is going to pivot at the shoulder, the elbow will lead, and the gun rocks back and seats into the holster. Your firing hand maintains wrist angle and grip pressures though all the way back to the holster. Nothing changes with that hand. The stage ends with your master grip still intact and the gun in the holster. The web of your hands is seated high in the beaver tail, the bottom 3 fingers still applying pressure, your wrist is still locked. This is the starting block to your draw and to a consistent presentation. This will also lead to finding the dot on the target every single time. Now from this point, having that master grip already in place, we're going to run 10 to 15 reps back through all the way to full presentation, starting at stage 3, going to stage 2, and then stage 1, full presentation, confirming kinesthetically that your dot returns to the same place every single time. Do this last series of reps until you get 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 consistent and repeatable outcomes. Now we're going to run it all the way from the beginning, from start to finish. The gun will be in the holster, the hands will be off the gun, at that indexing point that we talked about earlier, and then we're going to do 10 to 15 reps at each position before moving on. Position 1, establish your master grip. Position 2, hands merge. Position 3, compressed ready. Position 4, full presentation. Your body has already learned the entire process, but in reverse. Now, you're just going to run it in the direction you actually will use it. And because you've built it backwards, you're not hoping the dot will show up. You already know it will, and your body knows it will. At the start of this video, I told you there were 2 mechanical constants that determine exactly where your dot appears on every presentation. Here's what that actually means in practice. Those wrist angles and the grip pressures are not just coaching cues. They are 2 variables that your nervous system has to solve each and every single time you draw that gun. If either one changes, the dot moves. If both stay locked in, the dot is already where it's expected to be every single time. The 4-stage progression that you've just learned doesn't just teach you to chase the dot. It teaches your body what the 2 constants feel like at every point in the draw stroke to full presentation. That's the difference between hunting for your dot and presenting the gun and seeing the dot centered. If this gave you a clear picture of what's been moving your dot, drop a comment and tell me which checkpoint hit hardest. I read every one. And if you're not subscribed yet, You should be, so you can get training content like this, content built on the same principles as everything you've just learned. We diagnose the actual problem, we correct the actual cause, and then we achieve reliable execution. If you found this helpful, hit that like button and share it with someone that you think might benefit from it. Finding your dot isn't about luck. It's not about expensive equipment. It's about two constants, locking them down, and the dot takes care of itself. I'm Chris from Make Ready. As always, be well, be safe, and keep training.